And this this is denaturalized born killers. Denaturalized born killers on the Word Traction Podcast Network. Hope everyone is well today. This is another tool the Trump administration is taking further advantage of. Denaturalization, we were all talking about this a little bit more before ICE took our full attention in Los Angeles and Chicago, and then to over to Charlotte, and then to Minneapolis for real. But denaturalization was something that they always threatened, and but it wasn't clear what their goals were and what they would legally be allowed to do. Now, the legally allowed to do part of this program is something that is a little bit amorphous, something that it's kind of hard to get our heads around, because, of course, it's the Trump regime's plan to break every law that they care to and wait for the courts to figure it all out afterwards. And they did that with the men that they sent to El Salvador. And if there are planes on the runway, if there are planes in the air, you must turn around, follow the judge's orders, and they did. So we know, and through statements since the beginning of the administration, that the only court that they seem to recognize as having any authority is the Supreme Court. And even that is in doubt, judging by the president's rhetoric. But denaturalized born killers. There is a list. There were 12 people indicted last week on Thursday and Friday. And the process of denaturalization is underway, and they're from varying backgrounds. And some of them are legitimate targets for this process. For those not familiar, denaturalization is essentially removing your citizenship, or the Trump administration would view it or characterize it as, reversing a mistake from the past. And in that in some cases is an accurate reflection. These are people. There was one gentleman from Uzbekistan so this wonderful Uzbek gentleman came to the United States and paid a woman to marry him long enough to go through his naturalization process. He then divorced her, brought the real love of his life over from Uzbekistan, and then somehow, because I guess they wanted at least a twosome, if not a thruple or whatever, a threesome, is he married another woman before divorcing the first one, and tried to get her. Maybe that was wife first, girlfriend second. Anyway, he got himself caught up in that, and he has, prison will probably be a relief for him, because the shit that he gets when he goes home is probably more dangerous. There was also, a legitimate bad guy, a Colombian gentleman who, in fact, was a priest who had legitimate uh, child sexual endangerment charges from Colombia that were verified, but they were missed during his naturalization. He became a citizen, and the Trump administration dredged up those charges. Now, there are going to be a lot of, if you'll excuse me, trumped up charges used to try to challenge people's earlier naturalization. You could imagine just, Stephen Miller with with an Anthropic or other AI assistant, just coming up with the most bizarre, jaywalking while in Paris on honeymoon constitutes, you didn't disclose that on your immigration paperwork. Therefore, you lied. Therefore, you are no longer entitled to your citizenship. And they will try to use this, as they have done since the beginning, to in some way bring the legal citizenship of black and brown people into question, and then try to, with with haste, get them out of the country. And we can be assured there will be plenty of instances where they do not follow proper procedure, because that's who they are. Now, if you overlay on this denaturalization process, we have, to add some color to the commentary, we have World Cup. There's going to be lots of visitors coming to the country. So there's going to be strain on a system that is populated by poorly trained individuals that are at wits' end trying to meet their obligations and fighting through litigation about masks. And we learned that the gentleman that using that term in its loosest possible sense, the man that killed Renee Good is back on duty, back at work. So we still have Tom Homan trying to exert maximum pressure against the state of New York, because Governor Kathy Hochul is saying none of your bullshit here in New York. So there's tension all over. We're in an election season, so people will be trying to show that they are law and order candidates. They will try to reflect, blame Biden, if not Clinton, for shortcomings of criminal justice reform, et cetera, et cetera. You've been in the game before. So the going back to the genesis of denaturalization, when it was most popularized, was interestingly the Nazi hunters in the U.S. and in other places. I mean, there are stories written about it, but the war ended in 45. But in earnest, the real effort to identify Nazis that had emigrated to the United States, changed their name in many cases, and were just living normal lives. They were, some guy named Stan working in an auto factory in Detroit, something to that effect. But that was, hundreds of people, and there was a major push. It was perhaps given a little kick in the tuchus by the state of Israel, which was coming of age in the 70s, and they were aggressively hunting Nazis in South America. And it's not hard to imagine that they were giving a good push here in the United States to apprehend these the war criminals of that age, and that's perfectly reasonable. So we use that. If these German emigres, not Donald Trump's father, but people of that ilk that came to this country after the war, and like I said, changed. Franz became Frank, and got married to Betty, and had 2 kids, and lived in a suburb, and just trying to live a normal life after some of the most corrupt and disgusting atrocities in human history. And they thought they were denaturalizing 80-year-old men at a certain point in the 70s and 80s, that thought that they had sort of made it through. That was when denaturalization was almost in popular pop culture. It was the White Angel of Death in Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman. If you are genealogically limited and you're a young person and you've never seen Marathon Man, it comes with 0 Rotten Tomatoes and 5 stars. Fantastic movie, but dealing with the subject of Nazi war criminals doing dastardly deeds in the beautiful Mayor Mamdani city, right? Not Ken Griffin's city. It's Mayor Mamdani city, Nuevo York, right? Yeah. So now we can turn the corner and say this is the Nazis that we have loved and Nazis we have lost are now welcome back again, because the opposite of denaturalization, of course, is quite plainly naturalization. And in the last year of the Trump administration, if for round numbers sake we had 5,000 people come through a program, meaning to naturalize new American citizens that were under stress in their home country. You would think Afghanistan, because it's covered well in the news and 60 Minutes pieces and other networks that are not now regime media, where the story of the Afghans that helped our soldiers stay alive in that never-ending, forever war that is kind of what Iran appears to be shaping up to emulate. But the Trump administration has been acting with treating these people with tremendous indignity in promising them safety and a new life after they helped our soldiers and translators and guides and such in providing intelligence, and now we're just leaving them blowing in the breeze. And so in the last year, we naturalized 3 Afghanis and more than 4,000 white South African farmers. Right? Think of the men in Lethal Weapon, the ones that have that funny, you're black. Yeah. Um, these are not. They may be perfectly fine human beings. These white South African farmers, but what somebody, or quite possibly Elon Musk, campaigned to Donald Trump and say, "Look at these perfectly white humans," and you know that the blacks in South Africa unreasonably want their land back. The land that we stole from their ancestors. They're looking at us with a side eye, and I think they may take they want to take their land back. Can you imagine that? So Trump, of course, because he sees, a couple thousand more guaranteed MAGA voters. These are MAGA with better accents, and why not? So he pays for flights to bring them over and fast tracks their naturalization process. So they're basically walking off of the plane with full citizenship. Some of them have gone back because they arrived and they said, "I didn't know that everybody was such a fucking racist here," which is a funny thing to say for a white African farmer. But we are now the leaders of the world in really batshit racist Nazi wannabe and gonna be kind of behavior. We're distinguishing ourselves in some of the most repulsive ways that you can possibly imagine. So this is essentially Donald Trump, your president, yours, uh, assembling a new master race while he and Stephen Miller in another meeting are trying to ship out as many black and brown people as they can get away with before John Thune rolls back over onto his tummy, puts his clothes back on, and shows up for work at the in the Senate and says no, and says there's due process, says there is a certain propriety and dignity in the United States system that we're going to start recognizing again. Will that happen? We don't know, because Thune has been absent. He's been doing great at fundraising for the GOP. He has 2 super PACs himself and has raised a lot of money, not surprisingly, from the fossil fuel industry to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Not the amount of money that the Trump family has extorted, and nothing compared to what he ultimately will put in his family's coffers at the end of the first administration, or his second administration. It will be a mind-numbing amount. And one of the fortunate things, a very good interview, if you haven't seen it, I think it was earlier today, with Tim Miller Bulwark, interviewed James Comey. A very thoughtful, intelligent, career sort of law enforcement guy. He did some other things in the interregnum, but a smart man. Some people are peeved at him about the statements around the election and Hillary. And yeah, that was bad. That was horrible. It could have tipped part of the balance, and it was unnecessary, and it was inappropriate, the timing of those statements. But right now, he's our guy. He's taking the piss out of Trump. They refiled charges against him. He has to defend this, but he has resources, and he has teams of leading lawyers around the country that would do it for free, but don't have to. So he is well represented, well protected. But it was a very he's a thoughtful, clever man, and obviously, he's under indictment, so he can't spill all the tea. But it was fun to watch, or I listened to it. But it was a good interview. Always, Tim Miller. It's good interviews is what he delivers. So that's an endorsement for the Bulwark, Tim Miller, and James Comey. So rounding it out, Nazis we loved, Nazis we've loved, Nazis we've lost, Nazis that are coming home again. If it weren't enough that we're getting an inflow of whiter than Christmas South African farmers, we have on the other side J.D. Vance, a proud advocate for the free speech rights of the Nazi parties in the Death Star, the mothership of Nazism, Germany. So he was there, as we've talked about before, a year ago this past February at the Munich Security Conference, and extolling the virtues of free speech and why you being so mean to your Nazis, and prior administration, Joe Biden, Antifa, all of the silly ass mother MAGA talking points that are all, the blather that comes out when you take red pills every night for a year and a half. Then you just start kind of blathering the same talking points over and over again. So these were some of those same things, and we know that you know JD is of course an increasingly skilled liar and a good communicator. He will be a formidable candidate if he should win the Marco and JD tournament. I'm as I've mentioned before, excuse me. Until proven otherwise, I'm going to put my money with Donald J. Trump Jr. That if you think about loyalty, how was Trump wired, the legacy. His dad was a bad guy that must have done some damage to him for him to turn out the way that he did. But I'm not doubting that Donald J. Trump Sr. don't doubt that he love or what he thinks love should look like around his own children, right? Even Barron, who is not his natural son. Not Trump is not the biological father, but it seems like he even loves Barron. Even though Barron was fathered by a different man. I think the Nazis, white Christian nationalists, Proud Boys, less Proud Boys, and all the other ones that have various versions of clovers and swastikas and a lot of other things tattooed on their bodies, uh, not covered with in the same manner as people that we know in Maine. But there was I heard a sideline, but um, who was it? Brilliant. Oh, David French, New York Times, former JAG officer, a distinguished military career, a brilliant legal mind, all, stipulated, right? Man, he was on, I was another program I think I was listening to or reading when he was commenting on Graham Plattner, the Maine Democratic senatorial candidate. And David French cannot, just can't abide the idea or give grace to a guy that had that particular Nazi adjacent tattoo. That is a no-go for him because Mr. French, argues that it was it 5 years ago or better that those Reddit posts that can this man evolve? Uh, uh, Mr. Plattner, the candidate, said that he was, P, PTSD. He fought real battles. I mean, he was in the shit in the Marines and in the Army and the Marines. But as I recall, without having it in front of me, but he was in street to street Fallujah level combat, like the real thing. So you have to, for me, you have to give a big dose of grace to anybody that endured that, because that has long-term psychological and behavioral health implications. How could it not? You know, traumatic brain injury, the fact that you go out every day and kill numbers of other human beings and watch it while it happens, while you're doing it. That, I mean, come on. J.D. Vance, certainly more distinguished military service than his boss, but the only risk that JD uh, faced while he was in the military was having one of his articles put on the spike and not published. I mean, he was a war correspondent. He wasn't hats and bats in daily combat. So I got to. I guess I guess I made a Nazi leap, but the Plattner thing is you can appreciate both sides of it. You can appreciate people that anything to do with somebody deciding to have a Nazi tattoo put on their body, that's could be a disqualifying factor for some. But in 2026, with the alignment of the Republican Party and the conservative movement more generally with white Christian nationalists, including Nazis and extremists, uh, so much that they're doctoring the intelligence reports to delete all reference to right-wing national terrorism, which is the most dangerous form of it right now. The greatest number of incidents and the greatest number of deaths caused by terrorists, homegrown terrorists, are on the right side, not the fake Antifas. But and they went to the trouble of doctoring a report and issuing it in the name, with the Uncle Sam stamp of approval, which is it's not surprising from the Trump administration, but in any other real world with real leaders and people of goodwill would be a firing offense and a lot of discipline and a few just bad stuff, real bad luck. But anyway, so we'll I think we gave enough love to the Nazis for the night. The the naturalization, you have to watch it because behind the 12 that were thrown into the system this past week, there's an accompanying list of 275 more targets for denaturalization. I wasn't able to get the information of the other individuals. Like I mentioned, the Uzbek, two Colombians, and then all the rest brown people. Not surprisingly, excuse me, one Asian gentleman as well. And okay, one of them, in fact, admitted that he was part of a group that was sympathetic to an ISIS aligned. So, but it's a world full of challenging people. The one that doesn't get as much mention as he did 6 months ago or more is DJT's friend and his son's now former business partner, CZ, from China and Canada, who has the world's largest crypto exchange and facilitated funding for Hamas, ISIS, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad right ahead of the attacks of October 7th in Israel, right? And I still, when I hear somebody, or you saw the Bibi Netanyahu uh, easy handling that he got, by regime media on CBS, but it was known by Bibi Netanyahu that this man, this Binance CZ, was pardoned by Donald Trump when it was known by Donald Trump, Bibi Netanyahu, and others, and many others, that he had facilitated the financing of the very terrorists that carried out the October 7th attacks on Israel, the kibbutz, and the killing of thousands of people. And Netanyahu did not stand up in the Knesset. He did not stand up in the media and did not mention, let alone, just so maddening, he did not criticize Donald Trump's decision to pardon a known terrorist that facilitated the funding for these terrorists that killed so many Israelis, because Netanyahu was afraid that he would lose political power and influence and the U.S. military assistance that Israel relies on. Now, Netanyahu said, yeah, well, sure, I understand that we're going to have to wean ourselves off the, the U.S. Military support, the $3 billion, 3.8, whatever it is, billion dollars a year. 3.8 is a pittance. That's half a week in the Iranian adventure, and that's not even calculating Venezuela and otherwise. If you put Venezuela together with Iran and you calculate the additional damage to the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier by using it beyond its prescribed maintenance schedule, then you're at $80 billion, plus or minus, real money, not to Elon, but real money to you and me. And this is the no forever wars president. That's your boy. And so thank your countrymen that voted for him once, twice, or perhaps three times. And let's get back to serious people and all of the work after you listen to Jim Comey. There was an optimism in his comments that was encouraging, because sometimes it's hard to find reasons to be optimistic. You have to be optimistic, but you need to be reminded every once in a while, because the news can be pretty fucking horrible. In any case, sun setting in northern Massachusetts, and a nice 49 degrees, perhaps. Dog ready for some outdoor time. So I'll leave you. We'll be back tomorrow with something. Thursday with Corrupt Connections. Friday with DEI Fridays, and then on we go. So all the best to you and yours. Thank you again. Please feel free to subscribe. Please subscribe. If you are not subscribed, you are more than welcome to free subscribe, but please subscribe. That $10 a month option, 8, 10, whatever the heck it is, you're welcome to it. I'll buy the dog an extra treat, but please free subscribe. Please restack. Please tell two friends. Tell two friends. Call your wife, call your girlfriend, call them both. Let them meet. Let them talk about you. Let them talk about me. So, in any case, beautiful night. Thank you, and we'll catch you tomorrow.